Hello and welcome back to another module 4.1, Copy Clarity 5 Essentials for Crystal Clear Copy. So, why does clarity matter? The whole point of copy is to command the attention of your reader and maximize the persuasiveness of your message. Now, to do that, you need to make it simple, appealing, and digestible by making sure your message is delivered with clarity. So, let's think back to our customer avatar. Refer back to it and just remember, when you are writing copy, you'll model the message based on the person that matches the profile of your customer avatar, and you're going to use a vocabulary that resonates with them. So you've got to talk in their language, and that's what really motivates them into action. So one of the major keys to clarity is keeping things simple, and that's one major thing that you have to remember. Keep it simple. It needs to be clear who you're speaking to, what you're offering, and what you want them to do. And that's your call to action. So your call to action is what you want them to do. Just stating the obvious. That's call us now, click this link, or book your appointment now, or call us today. That kind of thing. That is your call to action. That needs to be in there, and it needs to be really clear. Your copy should be structured in a way that's simple enough even for an 8-year-old to comprehend. When readers have trouble understanding what you're saying, their confusion and frustration on a subconscious level is misattributed to you or associated with your brand. And that's bad news if you're trying to make a good impression on new customers. So one thing that makes copy more effective and persuasive is clarity. This quote from Daniel M. Oppenhauer says, "Write clearly and simply if you can, and you'll be more likely to be thought of as intelligent." Where people tend to go wrong. The mistake many business owners make is that when they write their first website, they really want to make a good impression and show that they know their stuff. So they deliberately use complex words as if they're writing for a university essay or dissertation. Now, that type of writing rarely connects with readers on a level that persuades them to become customers. If you want to connect and persuade and have a clearer message, you'll need to simplify your copy as much as possible. So let's elaborate on how you can do that. Number one, cut the clutter. Remove any unnecessary words and replace long, expensive words with shorter, simpler words. So, for example, instead of utilize, replace that with use. Instead of attain, replace that with get. Instead of required, replace that with needed. Are there any words that you can replace from a sentence without changing its meaning or context? Have a look at your about page or any of your flyers or brochures and see if there's any way you can simplify what's written on them. Have you ever been hungry and sat down at the table and it looks like an absolute feast, to the extent that there's so much food on the table that you suddenly don't feel like eating anymore? Can you relate to that? It's the same for your customers when it comes to reading your copy. So that's why you've got to break it up. Nobody wants to read long, boring paragraphs, and even if your content isn't boring, when it's all bunched up together, it looks overwhelming, and to the reader, it looks like a whole lot of work. Your customers want their lives to be easier, not more complicated. So you've got to make your copy more visually appealing just by breaking up the paragraphs into short sentences, preferably 3 lines long at most, with each sentence handling one specific point. Use an active voice. So choose an active voice as opposed to a passive voice. So for example, a passive voice is "students do well with our course." An active voice, putting some action into it, you can write that as "students are doing well with our course." You see the difference? Students do well with our course versus students are doing well with our course. It's happening, it's active. So I'll give you another example. Passive voice, "we sell hundreds of cupcakes daily." Active voice, "we're selling hundreds of cupcakes daily." See how that works? Number 4 is to use positive framing. Since we use up more mental resources to process messages with a negative sentiment, messages that are negatively framed reduce comprehension levels and therefore reduce the effectiveness of your message. So, for example, don't speak loudly versus speak softly. Don't drink excessively versus drink responsibly. Don't be late versus arrive on time. Do you see the difference? It feels different, and it's just generally easier to understand. Let's talk about word glue, and these are called coherence markers. Now they're like the glue that bridge ideas together to make body text easier to understand. And this is an unbelievably simple yet powerful tactic that doesn't interfere with the meaning of the message, but makes the reading easier to follow. So, for example, I worked all night on the paper. I was so exhausted. If you change that around and you say, I worked all night on the paper, that's why I was so exhausted. So that's why is the actual coherence marker. So that's the bridge that joins everything together, that makes it more digestible, makes it easier to read. Another example, you should exercise at least 3 times a week. When you do this, you'll feel more energized, creative, and happier in general. Now let's swap that around. So look, when we add a coherence marker, it will read as, you should exercise at least 3 times a week. When you exercise at least 3 times a week, you'll feel more energized, creative, and happier in general. As you can see from the examples, you can use coherence markers in 2 ways. So the first example we gave was the bridge, where you use a bridging word or phrase such as that is why, but, so, consequently, for example, or the re-mention, where you re-mention the point or phrase you referenced in the previous sentence. So in this previous example, that re-mention was when you exercise at least 3 times a week. So to review, active sentences are more vivid and more persuasive. So by putting action into your words, your readers are able to form a more mental picture, and it's easier to understand. By restructuring the sentences with active language, we make them simpler and more digestible. Use short, simple words that anyone can understand, leaving out any words you don't really need. And remember, clarity always beats cleverness or creativity every single time. Simpler words allow more fluency and helps your reader to process your message quicker and with more positive feeling, which holds their attention more. And when they experience this positive feeling, it's going to unconsciously be associated with you, your brand, your content, and your message. With that being said, you have successfully completed this module. Hope you got tons of value from it, and I will see you inside the next training. Bye for now.